So I wrote a book, Men, Women Want. This gentleman right here is the first chapter in, read the introduction and first chapter. And this is his response. Now, this is really interesting. So the first chapter is all about self-regulation being the number one thing that women need from men in order to demonstrate that they are safe, that they are somebody that they can feel safe around, open up to, be intimate with, not be gaslit, so on and so forth. Now, look at exactly what this gentleman is saying. Honestly, even as a child, I have always felt unworthy. Plus, I am enraged right now. I admit I have a fragile ego. Simply being silent and letting it pass doesn't seem to be working. What does the man do when the rage doesn't pass and just stays there? The first chapter, self regulation, elicited a response from me. I cannot wait to read chapter two, and you can see my response there. Now, this is a 52-year-old man. We've been going back and forth. That's why he read the book. By the way, if you would like to read an early draft of the book, it's in a Google Doc. I'm going to get it designed. It's going to be up on Amazon. You're going to be able to read a print version, download it. But right now, I'd love to hear men's responses and women, because women are the ones who are going to ultimately need men to read this, at least the ones who have any interest left in wanting anything to do with men. A 52-year-old man who works two jobs but doesn't make enough money, has 75% of his money going to, it sounds like, child and spousal support, even though she was the breadwinner. So resentment. And didn't get a response yet. I'm curious what he says about where the rage comes from, if he's aware of it, because I can already, just from going back and forth with him, figure it out. But look at the part about even as a child. Why does that matter? It matters a lot because, believe it or not, Bruce Lipton, PhD, he wrote the book, The Biology of Belief, talks about how by the 7 years old, we've essentially hardwired what we think is real and possible. As a 7 year old, before we have filters, before we have the ability to truly discern and understand adult life. And all of that is being hardwired as a kid. So when people say I felt this way as a kid, it literally is emotional stunting. And the ability to self regulate is or was never something this person was taught, probably never even thought about, maybe once or twice, but never really gave it deep thought or truly understanding what it means and why it's so important for him to be a happy, healthy, strong alpha male. Alpha does not mean machismo, it means calm, confident in himself without ever having to put anyone down, especially women, in order to feel better about himself, in order to feel more like a man or drive a big truck. And it's a cliche. Men drive big trucks for a reason, not just the small member conversation, but these small ego, fragile egos. Now, think about this before I show you a clip here. And this is of Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief. Before I play this clip, let's just talk about for a second, why would you defend what you believe is true if you accept the reality that what you're ultimately defending are beliefs that you came up with as a kid? What did the kid version of that would be worth talking about? That would be worth defending, right? That is the conversation. So as you listen to this quick clip, and then I'm going to also play a clip from Andrew Huberman to chime in on this conversation. But as a man, how does it feel to know what women feel about you now, that I can do this myself? I can make more than you. And while my girlfriend and I were talking about women in trad life, that a person in my profession who I personally believe is a scam artist, met a woman at the peak of her career when she was more successful in a lot of ways than him and more talented, certainly. But he had some breakthroughs. I'm a copywriter, and at least that's one of the hats I wear. And yeah, I read what he wrote, and it's like selling a fantasy to religious people, pulling the wool over their eyes to get them to buy a private or white label supplement that has no real value. It's cheap and sold as the Holy Grail. She now lives a trad life where she's in her femininity and preaching that to women to say, if you are in your femininity, you can get a rich man who will take care of you, and that's your job. And there's a lot of men who want women like that still. However, the growing population is women who are self-empowered and do not want to deal with the abuse of a man for anything. A house, the car, the lifestyle, not worth it. If it means abandoning everything that made me who I was, the woman who is with the copywriter who doesn't even look like she did anymore because she gave up her personality and her character and integrity in order to be his arm candy and all that by any stretch. So, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a trad life man, immersed in patriarchy? Do you want to be with a woman who is empowered, who doesn't care how much you make as long as you are on a journey? Let's listen to this.
But the problem is 95% of our life is coming from the programs of life, how to live life that we get in the first 7 years of life. A child below 7 has a lower vibration than consciousness. It's called theta. Theta is imagination. Oh, that's how kids play a tea party with mud pies. But to them, it's a real thing. A kid rides a broom. It's a horse. That's theta.
Theta. We as adults rarely get into that brainwave, the meditative brainwave. Kids live there. People with ADHD, they're still there to a large degree. Most men are in beta, which is the monkey mind, going in circles, intellectual, cerebral, going confirm biasing, negative bias, confirm bias. It's very simple, the beta mind of most men.
Imagination. Theta is also hypnosis. And the idea is this: before you can become conscious, if you don't have any programs, what are you going to be conscious of? 95% of our life, this is a fact, comes from those programs in the subconscious. Every day, only about 5% of their life are you using conscious, which is creative. I can feed you with an idea pill that we.
So the idea that you're only using 5% of conscious awareness to truly lead in your life, why we're always becoming where our attention is right now, but what directs our attention is not necessarily and not usually our conscious mind. The things we're thinking right now. I want you to think about this, guys. Very rarely are you where you physically sit or stand right now. In our minds, we are usually in the past or the future, regretting doing that, wishing we could do it better, hoping we could do that, hoping we're on the path to get there. But very rarely are we right here, right now, because the subconscious is constantly influencing our everything. And that dysregulates us if we're not aware of it. When you're aware of it, you can start doing something with it and about it. Let's listen to Mr. Huberman.
Circuits, meaning connections in the brain that generate the feeling of being happy, or circuits that generate the feeling of being sad, etc. That's been challenged. And yet, I think there's good evidence for circuits in the brain, such as limbic circuits and other circuits, that shift our overall states or our overall level of alertness or calmness, or whether or not they bias us toward viewing the outside world or paying more attention to what's going on inside our bodies.
By the way, most men, it's not a masculine trait to pay attention to the internal world. but it is the internal world that's painting the picture of the external experience. It's not the other way around. When we are in a state of scarcity, or we feel like we need to be a certain way, let's say you went down an Andrew Tate rabbit hole, which I need to do a video on just that, looking for workout advice, looking for dating advice, women advice, and then realizing, oh, I need to be a red pill guy. I need to be high value. That's all made up. That's all facade. That's not real. Listen to this a little more.
But the important thing to understand is that emotions do arise in the brain and body. And if we want to understand how emotions work, we have to look how emotions are built. And they are built during infancy, adolescence, and puberty. And
so once again, when we're kids, when we don't have the ability, the filters to discern information, what is told to us as reality, what we adopt as truth, and fight the rest of our lives to defend, even though we never really got to go on a journey of discovering truth. And that's the journey, the discovery of your truth, not taking for gospel what other people say. Why do you think certain people throughout history are known for certain breakthroughs? Because they're the ones, oftentimes the men, not different, who challenged predominant male belief. Men challenging male belief is what opened the door for people like my mother, who was a single mother, who worked as a nurse, who was constantly sexually harassed, who was constantly held down because she was a woman, not taken seriously because she was a woman, belittled because she was a woman, and then took herself out of that life, created her own independence, her own job, her own business. She became an entrepreneur. And while she wasn't the best business person, I will admit that, she led with her soul more than even her heart. She felt like she had a soul purpose. But that was the beginnings of women being able to make decisions for themselves and not be massively ridiculed for being dumb, because that's what happened to my mother. Women today oftentimes didn't have to experience that level of repression, or my mother being forced into a marriage with a man who was abusive, who got her pregnant in not so consensual ways, let's just say, and then got forced into marriage. That's trauma. So things are different from when I was a kid with how women are able to live in this world. And thank God, because as men, we should be ashamed for treating women that way, because what, we're better? Says who? Because we have more might and throughout history have shown the tendency, or not just the tendency, the outright conviction to demonstrate violence to get our way, to get what we want, to take what we want. Damn everybody else. That's men. That's man. We don't live in those times anymore. And if you're not evolving, you're going to be a part of the loneliest generation in history. And to just quickly go back to this image, this man is getting left behind, and he's afraid she's going to leave him because she's the breadwinner and he can't make a living. He can't eat without her. And yet, look at this. This is indicative of what's going on with men, not just older men, but also younger men who are trying to hold on to, I want my patriarchy. Your entitlement is from an old thinking, an old paradigm. We're moving into matriarchy. That doesn't mean that you don't still get to be a man. I'm not a leftist or somebody who's woke and gonna say you can't express your masculinity. Do it, but do it healthfully and in a way that is not blaming any woman, because that is what a weak, fragile man does, and that is not masculinity. That is pure fear. And when you live your life based in fear, you become somebody that you generally don't like. And most people don't either. I would love to hear your comments. This is a new channel. Let's build this conversation. And again, if you would have open eyes to read my book, I will give you a free link for your feedback, good or bad. I want it all. Appreciate it. And I'll see you in the comments.